Hi guys, I'm Tom Connell, the hair art director for Davines, and what I'm going to be doing today with this haircut is doing something called combination cutting. So I'm going to be using a combination of the razor through the front and scissors through the back. The reason I'm going to be doing this is because what I want to show is how both tools and both techniques can coexist in the same head and can have a really effective result, in particular in the salon world. Because what I found is that we are giving a client a haircut that still has structure and still has form, but at the same time it has a wearability and a movement to it that as it grows out, say the client wants to tuck the hair behind the ear, they want to let it flick, let it move, let it react in the way that a hairdresser hasn't combed it into place. I've found that the razor is a great tool for providing that for the clients. So I'm going to show how I found that both can coexist. So I've just got a medium length head block. I'm going to use a little bit of the Davines Day spray just to act as a cutting agent to give me a little bit of grip and a little bit of hold to the haircut. And then I'm going to go in. It's a really quick technique and it's a really nice shape. The idea for the shape is, if you think back to the really cool Linda Evangelista haircut from the 90s, combine that with like a guy's 90s rave bowl type haircut, so combine the two. So it's going to be a little bit heavier around the outline than Linda Evangelista's haircut, but inside I'm going to add a lot of texture and a lot of layering through there as well. So all I'm going to do is I've sectioned off just behind the ear on both sides, isolated the crown area, and then I'm going to go in with the razor through the front and get a really heavy, almost bowl type line that hits just below the bridge of the nose, just above the bridge of the nose and just below the eyebrows, to get almost a haircut that's too long. I almost want it to have to contract. I'm going to use no blow drying in this. It's all going to be dry naturally as I'm cutting. As I'm self-isolating at home, I don't really have anyone to film this, so you can see I'm filming it on a tripod. So I'm going to get to your questions, but if there's any questions, what I'm going to do for the last 5 minutes, I have my laptop here as well, and I'm going to look through the questions and answer some of those for you as well. Okay? Cool. So first thing I'm going to do, wide tooth comb. I'm going to comb it quite solid. The day mist is quite nice for this because it helps the hair kind of jump and stick together. I'm going to really try and not be too, too neat through the front, because I really want a rawness and a roughness to the line. So you can see I'm combing, and you can see with the wide teeth, it creates quite thick panels. And to do that, because I want a very, very chunky shape. And then I'm moving the razor about 1 centimetre up and down, because I want to create some softness still through the ends. Can you guys see that okay? Good. So you can see what I mean by I'm almost letting the haircut be a little bit too long because I want to give the hair an opportunity to contract and move, and especially when I put this layering and this texture inside, I want to give space for that. And if I cut the fringe too neat and too short, then it's going to provide a different shape. I'm just going to tilt this up a little bit because I just want to make sure you guys can see above any comments that are coming through. Is that better? Okay, so I've got my very, very rough first line in here. I'm going to spin the head around so you guys can see. I'm going to use this as a guide to come into the side. Another thing I like about the razor is it means that I can work straight in and get my outline all the way through the hair without having to section off. Because essentially what I'm doing is is creating graduation with this movement over the course of a centimetre all the way through the edges, so you can see through here things start to kick and move and get all these nice little details that maybe I would miss if I was using a scissor and cutting it very bluntly. So I'm following that line around through here, making sure that the razor is parallel to the line that I would like to create, and then just coming behind the ear. So if I spin her around, you can start to see all this kind of nice little, like, this beautiful little kicks and little details that I find that I wouldn't have had otherwise. So I'm going to pull her right around to this side. I'm just going to check the length to make sure I'm right. You guys can see. And then I'm just going matching the line from the other side. And you can see how fast this technique is as well. If I was using scissors, I would go through and get my baseline in, and then I would go through and build my graduation up that way. But the beauty of being able to this movement, I'm building little graduation right from the top. So you can see now how I start to get this cute little bowl shape through here. Before I go on to the back, I'm going to go through the top and just add a layer in to take off some roundness to it. So I'm going to grab a regular cutting comb now. So I'm going to put the head up straight. I'm just taking a vertical section right down the centre. And I'm going to cut a line following the shape of the head. Because I don't want to affect the length on the front, I'm going to lift straight up from the head, but I'm not going to cut until my fringe starts to drop away. So I'll just do that again so people can see. So you see, as I start to lift this up, you'll see my fringe start to drop away. Once my fringe starts to drop away, I don't need to worry that I'm going to start to alter the shape or the length that I've created through the top, through the fringe. So I'm going to pull this in here, and we're just increasing the length going through towards the crown. So here's the slight different bit with this now. So I've got this central channel coming through here. I'm going to spin the mannequin around because I want to show this detail. I'm going to start to over direct to the front, to the centre of the head. So I'm over directing everything onto that previous line. And the reason I'm doing this is twofold. One, I want to remove some of the weight. I don't want the shape to be too round and too bowly because then it can look a little bit dated. So I'm over-directing everything into the middle. The second reason that I'm doing it, over-directing into the middle, that if I feel like if I was just to lay a square across the top, then I would lose too much of the bowl. And then it might just look like a short layered haircut with a little bit of weight. So I still want to keep a hard outline, but I want to increase enough weight through the side so it has a strength, but I don't want it to have so much that I'm left with just a kind of standard issue bowl haircut. So you can see that I'm over directing again back into that central channel. So when working on a haircut like this, or working on an idea for this, I started to look at various different, various different references of what I wanted to do. And one of the ones, as I said, was the Linda Evangelista haircut from the 90s. But then I looked at how I could make it be a little bit more, be a little bit more original. So then I started to think, well, what other type of movement or what other type of style of people wore these type of haircuts? And it led me to, in the UK in the 90s and the late 80s, there was a rave culture, and a lot of the guys wore this type of haircut, this kind of very, very heavy, almost like you couldn't see their eyes. And there's some like really iconic images of people very, very sweaty at 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning in these warehouses that had these really cool haircuts. And because obviously they've been dancing and doing whatever else they were doing all evening, they were very, very hot. And these images that I saw, the hair started to congeal with the sweat and created all these it was a bowl haircut, but it had lots of movement and kicks, and I was like, that's quite cool actually. I can use that because, you know, a lot of these trends or styles or fashion, whatever you would call it, you know, they come from street culture, and they come out of necessity, and they come from accidents, and this movement of people that are into this type of music, having this haircut, dancing a lot, and getting very, very hot and sweaty, it's what triggered this type of haircut in my mind. So you can see I'm just over directing everything into the central panel here, so that I'm still increasing the length on that layer. And you'll see now, if I just add a little bit more of the day, you can see now how we have this little bit of texture and this little bit more choppiness coming through here, and then we get all these kicks. As I said at the beginning, I'm not going to use a hairdryer on this at all. As there's something really, really nice about the current situation that we're all in, is that we have time. And I don't work in a salon as much anymore, but when I did work in the salon a few months ago, I always really wanted to let my clients' hair dry naturally, but obviously you got your next one in, and they're maybe on their lunch hour, and they have to get back to work or whatever, and you're always restricted for time. So a lot of the haircuts that I'm doing at the moment during this time of self-isolation, I've decided to not use a hairdryer on any of them, because I really want to see all these haircuts that I've spent years doing and years developing. What are they like if I just take a step back, apply some nice products, and just let them dry for an hour or 2 hours, 3 hours, however long. And there's some really beautiful shapes. You know, a very clean, blunt cut graduated bob left to dry in the sun does some really interesting things that maybe I never would have saw, because in the salon I would have always been, you know, cutting, wrap drying, blow drying, ironing. So, right. So, you can see I have this line through here. If anyone's sending any questions, I can't really see on the screen, but as I said, I'm going to respond to any questions right at the end. So, I have my line in here, and I have my length. I actually quite like this being long through here, but I'm going to stick with what I originally set out to do. So, I'm just going to tilt the head forward slightly. If any of you can hear my daughter in the background, that's because my wife is upstairs with my 2-year-old daughter, so sometimes 2-year-olds don't really obey the quiet rules when you're doing it live. So I'm going to go through and start to graduate through the back. I'm going to take a slightly curved section, and I'm going to use the guide from my sides. Okay. I'm going to use the guide from my sides, and then I'm going to go in quite short and quite square through the back. Everyone see that? So you can see I'm getting my knuckles right into the back of the head. Let's take that a little bit shorter. So to do that, I'm not going to pull down as much, I'm going to elevate out a little bit. Each week at this time, every Monday, for the next 5 weeks, I'm going to be doing a live with Hairbrain, who very kindly asked me to do that. And each of the cuts are going to be a combination of razor and scissors, but they're also, I'm going to do cuts that are, some are strong and some are conceptual, but they'll all be able to be adapted to be used in the salon, because I think it's good to be inspired and excited, but it's even better if you've got something that you can take away teach your staff, teach yourself, when everyone's back up and running, and add to everyone's skill set and their repertoire. I really firmly believe that situations like this that we're all in at the moment, they're as much about discovery as they are about recovery. And I think it's how often do we get the opportunity to sit back and reassess and rethink. You know, we get with our busy lives, we're always doing, and I think, you know, to just be able to sit back and go, you know what, I'm gonna read this book, or I'm gonna, you know, learn that language, or I'm gonna figure out something personally that I'm doing, is I'm going back looking at all my classic haircuts. With my job as art director for Davines, and in my previous role, it's fortunate, but the role that I'm in, it's all about what's next. You know, where are we going? What's the next new collection? What's the next new technique? And that's great, and I love doing that. But sometimes that means that you're in a situation where maybe you might not have done a classic graduated bob for 6 months, or maybe you haven't done a classic round layer or firefly or something like that. So what I'm doing is I'm using this time to take a step back and almost polish up on my basics, really. You know, trim any fat off my technique, because, you know, we're all doing clients and your busy lives, you all pick up bad habits, and I'm no different. And that's something, that sentence, trim all the fat off my techniques, is something that's in my mind, and I think that's what I'm going to aim to do. I'm going to get rid of any bad habits that I've developed over the years and try and improve rather than just wait it out. So you can see I'm going in quite tight into the neck through here, and then every 2 or 3 sections I'm just cross-checking to make sure. As I said earlier, for anyone else that has joined in, I'm going to answer any questions at the end. I'm going to spend 5 minutes going through them all. I have my laptop here as well, just to, because I'm cutting and because I'm working with a tripod, I can't really see any of the questions that are coming in, but I'll make sure I go through and spend a few minutes at the end answering them all. And if I don't get time to do that all on the live, I will definitely go through and answer in the comments section. So you see I'm getting my knuckles really, really tight into there, so that I take all the length off. I'm going to do one more section. No. So, you can see now, I moved the length out of the way, I've started to continue on with that line. So I'm going to spin around this way, and hopefully this. I just saw a question that came on there, and what type of scissors do I use? These are the little black scissors from Mazzella and Palmer. They are really, really great. JB from Mazzella and Palmer's is a good friend, and he introduced me to these scissors. And I'm very much kind of a scissor guy that likes my scissors to be as small as possible. I almost want them to be an extension of my hand. So the narrower and smaller the scissor, the better for me. So these have worked really, really well. I've had them for about 6 months and I'm really happy with them. So you can see on this side now, the same, where my knuckles were very, very tight into the nape area on the right hand side. On the left hand side, obviously I'm reversing this to make sure that the points of my fingers are pointing right into the head. You know, it's a good tip for when you're educating this is wherever your fingers are pointing is wherever the hair is going. So if your fingers are out from the head and they're pointing at the floor, the hair's going to go longer and the hair's going to follow down into the floor. And if they're pointed into the neck, that's where the hair's going. So if you want the hair short into the neck, point into the neck. And it sounds like a simple way of explaining it, but sometimes the simple ways are the best, I think. I think, you know, working on cuts for salon life, the way that I always found, and I worked in the salon for over 20 years, is it's, how can I say? I think I always looked at it like a full client list is, rather than going, I see a lot of hairdressers that say, oh, you know, I've got another 8 clients to go, or I'm going to do a graduated bob, or I'm going to do a long layer. And that's fine, but that's a technique. That's your tool. That's the same as a chef saying, I'm going to chop some mushrooms or I'm going to saute some onions. It's a technique, and you use that technique to create a dish, or in our case, a haircut. And the way I always looked at it is, I just had 8 design problems to solve. And that design problem started when my client walked through the door and I sat down to do my consultation. And the cuts like I'm doing here today will be no different. So I don't differentiate, you know, a hairdresser that works in the salon from any designer. Because any designer, whether you design a Ferrari or a building or a hotel or a collection of clothes or a movie, anything, every designer has a budget. Every designer has a material to work with. They have a brief from the client. In our case, the consultation is our brief. And it's up to them. They have a time limit of which to do it in. And it's up to the designer to use their creativity and their skills and their ideas to solve that design problem. And when I worked in a salon, and when I still do now, I still see around 20 clients a month. That's what I look at it like. I look at each client as a design problem, and I listen to them and listen to their lifestyle and who are they as a character and who are they as a person, and then we will design a look together. And honestly, the second you start to look at each client that comes through the door as a design problem to be solved, then your day just goes like that. Your day is just so, because you're just solving eight design problems, and that's amazing. And sometimes that might be a full restyle, or sometimes that might be a case of widening someone's fringe 1 centimetre, but you change everything about them. And the second that I started to think about my work as a design problem that needed solving rather than a technique, then I just started to enjoy my work much more. And I think that's, if anyone can take that away and take back to the salons with them when they reopen, I really feel like it will be, it makes your day fun. It makes your day fun, definitely. So you can see I'm just coming through to the back now, still keeping it tight into the nape, and we're just going to start to meet into the middle. So if anyone just came on a little bit later, what I was saying was that the reason that I'm using scissors through the back and razor through the front in this haircut, and all the haircuts I'm going to be doing on these lives are going to be these combination haircuts, is because I want to give the haircut still a structure and a foundation through the graduated area. But I also, I'm just going to spin around a little bit here, but I also want it to give a real shattered, wearable shape through the front. So if I was thinking this haircut's on a client, where is the first thing my client's going to find that it's going to get a little bit heavy or unruly? Most clients would say around the sides, over the ears, behind the ears. So I feel like if I'm using a razor like I've done through the sides and the front, then this client's going to be able to just tuck this hair behind the ears, and it's going to flick and it's going to move, and she's going to get she's going to get 2 or 3 styles out of it while she's growing it, or until she sees me again. And that's something that I'll always try and do with my clients is, I don't want the haircut, the day I cut it, to be the best it looks, and then it gets progressively worse each day until she becomes to get it cut again. I want it to be a haircut that improves, and she almost gets 2 or 3 or 4 styles during the kind of life of the cut. And using a combination of razors and scissors is the best way that I've been able to, certainly the best way that I've been able to facilitate that for my clients. So you come through now, you can see that we've got this kind of slight bowly type line through the back, and then we have the disconnected crown section. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to take diagonal sections, I'm going to comb it down to the line of my graduation, I'm going to lift it out, and I'm going to cut it. Now at this point as well, I'm going to do the opposite way on the other side, just so that you can see the difference. You could obviously use the razor to blend that in as well, but I'm just going to show the difference with both. So you can see I'm not putting any tension on, I'm just elevating it onto the graduation line that we've already created, combing that down, and you can see how that starts to build through there. This is my favourite part of the haircut, when you've kind of done all of the base and then you're just connecting everything in there. It's kind of the most satisfying part of the cut, I think. You'll notice as well that I'm turning my scissors slightly under. That's because that I want to create, say if I've got a section here that's what, 1/4 centimetre thick. When I'm cutting it, I want to create the underneath of that section a couple of millimetres shorter, so that the slightly longer piece on top just folds in and just presses it in. And I think it's doing that shape. If I just show it again, combing this down, and as I come underneath, you see I just turn my scissor under, so the back blade is cutting up higher than the top, and you'll just find, well, you can see kind of how that just wants to fall in straight away. So this side, I'm just going to show the opposite with the razor, and then it shows that, well, you've just seen both ways of blending that in there. So I blended it in there, obviously that creates something that's a little bit cleaner and a little bit more structured. Coming through this side, we'll take a diagonal. Again, exactly the same way of doing it, combing it down onto the line, but I'm just blending it off with the razor. And it's just going to create a more shattered, softer shape. Comb down onto the line, I can see my guide underneath. I'm going to split this section as well. And again, you'll see I'm just combing it and seeing where it wants to go. I really, when I'm cutting hair, I'm trying to remove myself from the hair as much as possible. I don't want to impose myself too much on it, because I find if I impose myself too much on it, I'm not there every day when my client's styling it. And then if I've pulled the hair in a certain way, because that's the way I wanted to do it, maybe that hair doesn't want to go that way, and when the client starts to style it in the morning and I'm not there, it starts to kick and it starts to move, and then she starts to get separation. So I really try and let the hair be the hair, and I impose myself as little as possible. One thing I'm going to do now, because I laid through this area, I'm just going to go in and check if there's a corner to take off. Yeah, so you can see there's just a slight corner through the crown. So I hope everyone who's watching from all around the world and the current situation that we're facing, I don't think that anyone is untouched by it in any part of the globe. But I think, you know, from what I'm seeing from the hair industry as a whole, and obviously we're one of the many industries affected by it, the response from online educators and all the way through to salon owners has been pretty incredible, and I think it shows what a people-focused industry that we have, how much everyone's rallied around to support and to inspire and to educate each other. It's you know, these things come and they're pretty difficult, but some pretty good stuff comes from them as well, I think, sometimes. So I'm just using a little bit of the day again so I can see all these little kicks and movements. So I'm going to come through to the hairline now, through the back. And I'm going to refine with the points of my scissors. So I don't want it to be too blunt, but I also don't want all this length. So you see, I'm cutting quite vertically into the hairline because I want to create a very, very jagged, soft outline. I don't want something that sits quite thin, and if I was going too much on an angle, I'm going to create chips where I just want to really soften off the outline. Almost so it just disappears, you can't really see the start and finish to it. I'm going to come through here as well, just behind the ear. I'm going to just elongate that line out a little bit more. And again, you'll notice the first thing I said is that I want something to have some structure but still be quite relevant and still be quite broken through the edges. So you'll see I'm not being very neat and combing down through here. I've got my foundation and my graduation in through the back. The rest I just want it to be really quite shattered and apply a little bit of this serum through here because it's going to allow me to get all that kind of chunkiness and the hair to clump together, which is what I was in my initial inspiration piece of seeing the guy that had been in the rave with this bowl that was all heavy and sweaty. You can kind of see now as we get the texturizing serum how it all starts to move around. And I think that's this. And this is the beauty of using the razor. And then the back being nice and structured. I know that's going to grow out for her, if this was a client, really well because I've got cut it technically. But I know this is going to grow out well because it has all this kick and movement. And if I just bring a little bit closer so you guys can see. And I'll just say a little bit about the colour as well. So this was a standard head block, it's one of the Davines head blocks. It's kind of between a 5 and a 6 base naturally. So I went through with one of the new View nuances, which is 4,44. Just a really beautiful, deep, coppery red. And you can see through here, it just gives it a little bit of richness. And because I knew that I wanted that kind of wet texture in it, I didn't just want the kind of standard issue browny head block type colour. I wanted to have a little bit more warmth and a bit more richness to it. If I'm just kind of come in front, and this is what I like. You see here, and here, and here, there's that little kick where she looks like she's been dancing all night. She looks like, the best way I could describe this would be, she looks like she's coming home from a night out. She doesn't look like she's going out for a night out. And that's, I suppose, what I wanted to create when I set out doing this haircut. So you can, I'm just going to do one more 360. So you can see we have the structure of the graduation through there, but we have all this shattered shape. We have this height through here, and then we have this really cool. And do you remember at the beginning when I said that I'm leaving the fringe almost too long? That's because I wanted to leave room for all these. So she's almost peeking out from inside it. So I'm going to go in and just have a look and see if there's any questions to answer. And just while I do that, I'm going to just put a flat clip in here because I want that to dry just with a little bit more movement. So I'm just going to jump to my laptop to the side just to check out any comments and any questions. Can I recap on what I did from the beginning? Yes. So for anyone that missed it, what I did from the beginning was I combed the hair naturally falling forward. I separated the hair just behind the ear, isolated the crown area, and combed everything with this wide tooth of the comb all over the front of the head, and then I used my razor to create a heavy bow line that started in the centre of the nose and finished just behind the ear on both sides. I then I took a vertical section and layered to the shape of the head through the top, but I over-directed everything into the centre in order to remove weight but still keep around the bow line through here. And then I went through, graduated through the back, quite a square graduation through there. I didn't let it drop too low and get too round because I wanted to continue this line off through here. And then I just blended the corner in through there. And that, as I was cutting the back, this front was drying with all these little kicks and things due to the kind of beauty of using the razor. So I'm just going to check out a couple more comments. Yeah, I see someone else asking about the scissors again. So the scissors again are from Modella & Partner. My friend JB over there, he has the little black scissors. They're absolutely fantastic. Very, very narrow, very, very detailed, and you can get in all those little sharp pieces. Especially good for men's hair when you've got or short ladies' haircuts when you have to get around the ear. They're really good. And then I'm just going to scroll through and see any more comments. There's one there, why did I elevate into the centre? So just to recap on that, because I layered through the top, I wanted to keep the bow line through the side, but I didn't want it to be too heavy. So I layered across the top to remove the weight, and then I over-directed into the centre so that I was keeping the line, but it wasn't too heavy. So the angle of the layering was more like this rather than square, because if it was square, I feel like I would have removed too much weight and then it kind of just would have looked like a standard issue short haircut. So if there's any more comments on that, any more questions, I'm going to scroll through in a little bit to have a look at them all, and I'll make sure I get back to everyone. So this is my textured Evangelista haircut, kind of inspired by Linda Evangelista 90s supermodel haircut, but meets a 90s rave guy dancer. I'm going to be here on Hairbrain every Monday, going forward at the same time, 5 PM UK time. And tomorrow I'm going to be on Davines Education channels, where I'm also going to be doing a live cut at the same time, 5 o'clock. So I'll see you there. Thanks very much, guys. I really appreciate it. Stay cool, stay safe, and I'll see you all soon. Thank you.